Well, the Epstein files are coming. We're about to find out why Trump has flip-flopped so many times on the urgency of their release. The two political parties agree on nothing, and now they ostensibly agree on the importance of these powerful horn dog men being held to account. The victims and survivors want them out. The president campaigned on wanting them out. Then his powerful men and one scurrilous woman failed those girls back then. We will change topics into what have we done to boys? Have we let them down? How do we save them? Scott Galloway is here. This is Hot Mics with Billy Bush, presented by our friends at LA Golf. Hot Mics. Great time. You know it. Hey, it's Hot Mics. I'm Billy Bush. Thank you so much for being with us on TuneIn and YouTube. If I had $1 for every person that said to me, you have got to get Scott Galloway on Hot Mics. Anyway, I texted him. I kept after him. We found a time. I feel very, very fortunate. He's an important voice today. If you don't know Scott, he's an NYU marketing professor at the Stern School of Business, co-hosts the Pivot podcast with Kara Swisher, the Prof G podcast, or known as the Prof G Pod, entrepreneur, Red Envelope. He started that company, sold it, made a bunch of money. L2, a digital intelligence firm, Profit. He's a public speaker, author of The Algebra of Happiness, and now Notes on Being a Man, which is a really, really important book about boys. But I welcome Scott Galloway from the UK. Hey, man, how are you?
I'm good, Billy. Thanks for having me.
Oh my God, thank you for doing this. You said you gave a speech to Congress about boys and the situation we're in?
Yeah, I just got off with the Congressional Dads Caucus, which I guess is about 40 or 50 members of Congress who are focused on family and specifically the role that fathers play.
Is that bipartisan? Were they both parties and mostly, or?
It was mostly Democrats, but I do think there were some Republicans there, and I was supposed to go address all of the Democratic senators last week, but because of the shutdown, I didn't go. But yeah, I'm spending a lot of time talking to our elected representatives right now.
Well, I think it's nice that they're finding time to talk about being fathers because they're very, very busy. Obviously, look, we're keeping our eyes on the television at the at the time of this taping. President Trump has not signed the legislation that they just pushed through the Congress and Senate very quickly to have the Justice Department release the Epstein files. He could sign it at any minute. He said he would right away. So they've been busy on that and the government shutdown and all of. What do you make of? You speak on politics. What do you make about this? The Epstein files, the fact that Trump has flip-flopped a million times. He campaigned on releasing him. He paraded a bunch of influencers outside the White House with binders of, partial release of the files. And it was a huge platform and then a total about-face on the whole thing. And here we are.
Yeah, I remember when my now 15-year-old was 5, he wrote on the wall with a marker. And then the look he had when we walked in, and he realized he'd spelled out his own name on the wall. And that there was no way. He just looked so guilty. What I don't understand about the president's behavior is it's as if he's said, I want to give everyone every indication that I'm guilty of something really terrible. And he did not want to release these things. He's trying to pretend that he's out in front of it because he realized they were about to get released. But typically in American history, it's not the scandal that brings people down, it's the cover-up.
Yeah.
And he just couldn't, for someone who has such great political instincts, I can't imagine anyone behaving as if they're more guilty. So we'll see, but when you have someone heading the FBI who's an acolyte and you have your personal lawyer heading the DOJ, I wouldn't put it past. I don't understand why people aren't more worried about some sort of whitewashed or altered release of the files. If I had to predict, I think there'll be sort of a soft release that will have a lot redacted except for the names of famous Democrats. But I'm better than your average bear at predicting business outcomes, but I'm terrible with political outcomes. I keep thinking this is the new red line. I
Yeah.
do think the seminal figure right now is Marjorie Taylor Greene, and that is someone in her campaign has done polling and said it actually makes sense now to come out against the president. And I think we're going to see more and more of that over the next several weeks.
I do too. I think it's interesting. I think it's sort of he built this movement, and this movement, MAGA, if you call it a movement, is basically whatever he says it is, whatever direction he. But maybe this is the moment where the movement is bigger than the man. It exists, or maybe it goes on or forward without him, because normally he's been able to redirect. He's been given limitless grace by everybody who follows him, and then at this point, it's when Marjorie Taylor Greene says no and goes the other way, it's I feel like you may have lost the room, which is no one ever thought would happen. And
Yeah, my co-host on Pivot, Kara Swisher, thinks he's not going to finish his term, which I think is a little bit dramatic. And she
really,
has, yeah, she's pretty biased against the president, but it feels as if, I mean, it just feels as if the worm has turned quite a bit. And also, if what's strange is that AI right now, America could be best described as a giant bet on AI, and that is 77% of the earnings growth this year in the S&P is from 10 companies. If it wasn't for the massive run-up and valuations of these 10 companies, which are now 40% of the S&P would actually be down. Our GDP growth would be flat. And my thesis is that if it wasn't for AI and the incredible run-up of these stocks, the president wouldn't have the cloud cover to be sending troops into cities. The S&P and the Nasdaq are actually fairly damaging metrics because they give the delusion or the illusion of prosperity, even when the Main Street economy isn't going very well. And the president, more than anything, is evaluated based on whether the markets are green or red. And so, as long as the markets continue to go up, he has license to do things. So, if in fact the markets do unwind or there's a drawdown in the next 6 months, then I think it gets really ugly for the president.
oh yeah, I mean, it's interesting the thing about technology, and when they released the video outside of Epstein's jail cell and there was a minute missing. I mean, it didn't take the sleuths but a second to figure that out. And I mean, so I always feel like you said the cover up is worse than the crime. I mean, if you try and scrub those things and you try to give us if they've been working on these the whole time, getting ready for the moment that they have to be released, and there's some type of tampering being done, don't you think people will know?
I, the honest answer is I don't know. I think, and Billy, I'm quite frankly, I'm just not sure your politics. I'm a progressive. I think this is an absolute orgy of corruption. I think that starting a crypto scam where anyone can put money into a crypto account and you don't know why. I think if you send people to fundraisers and offer $3 million, the next thing you know, your son-in-law or your son gets a pardon. It just strikes me, or your kids roam around a few days before you go to the Gulf and start doing deals for golf courses and buildings and accepting planes. It just strikes me that, in America, we've monetized the healthcare system. Our healthcare system is not about helping people live longer. We've decided it's about shareholder value. And the top 10% of Americans, if you're from a 1% income earning household, you're going to live 12 years longer than someone in the bottom 1%. America has the best healthcare system in the world if you have money, because it's essentially we're monetizing healthcare. And my sense is now we've reached into, well, now we're monetizing Congress. Fine, you get elected to Congress, and it's on both sides. Speaker Pelosi is leaving Congress worth almost $500 million. The S&P is up 200% over the last 10 years. Buffett's up 300%. Pelosi's up 600%.
How? It's all insider trading. I mean, it's just
Right. That's right. It would be statistically impossible for her to achieve those types of returns consistently unless she had access to non-public information. Now, she hasn't done anything illegal, but you have both sides of the aisle engaging what I'll call low rent corruption. And then Trump comes in and says, you guys are playing small ball. I'm going to be corrupt for billions of dollars.
Yeah.
So my point is, I don't understand why, if they're willing to be this corrupt across other dimensions of their activities, why they wouldn't find acolytes or loyalists to alter these documents, redact key components, keep certain things out of the public eye. So the notion, I'm just not confident that we're just going to all of a sudden see everything and the truth is going to come to light. Also, I don't have a feel for what the red line is, because I would have thought there was a variety of things that would have been a red line, and they don't appear to be. Now, is this it? We'll see. But I don't have faith that we're going to see that all of a sudden we're going to have full transparency here. I'd be curious to see what is actually released and how it's, if and how it might have been altered.
I agree with you on I agree with you that, look, the problem with Trump, at the core is that there is no difference between a lie and the truth. It's all narrative, and it's about, winning the narrative. And I think, like you said before, when your personal lawyer runs the, Justice Department, and you've got an acolyte running the FBI, I wouldn't put it past him to put whatever version of whatever he wants out and then stand by it and hammer and hammer. The only thing that's different, I guess, red line wise, the only thing that's different now is that people within his party have turned on him, and it's to what degree. And I think we're about to find that out. You asked about my politics, or you posited about it a second ago. Mine are, you say raging moderate, I say radical centrist. I am so sick and tired of politicians who have failed us. Of course, that was Trump's message when he came in. I'm going to clean up the swamp, politicians. But I really am. Like, it's, I look for, there is no moral high ground to stand on. You look at these Epstein files. I mean, these people the Republicans were doing everything they could for Trump, for the name of power, to hold them back and never let them get to a floor, to even have a discharge position, to get them there for a vote. They'll do anything to keep it from getting there. And then all of a sudden, hey, 427 to 1. No. We all agree, absolutely, we must stand up for these girls. They don't have a leg to stand on, and it doesn't seem like I'm sure there are some really good ones. I just don't see them.
Yeah, I think they realized they'd lost, so they wanted to try and get out in front of it. But they did, to be clear, we had the head of FBI saying that all the files that could be released legally had been released. That was a lie. We have the Speaker of the House not refusing to seat someone fairly elected. It's just very strange. The most powerful person in the world is Donald Trump. Second most powerful is she. I honestly believe you could make an argument that the third most powerful person in the world right now is a dead pedophile. He's forcing Congress to close. Speaker Johnson sent Congress home because he didn't want to seat the person who was going to vote to get the Epstein files out. They did everything they could. I believe we are bombing boats in Venezuela because of Jeffrey Epstein. And this is my theory, and I realize it sounds paranoid, but doesn't mean I'm wrong. I think that there are a group of 4 or 5 very talented, very smart young people who are very facile with AI in a room at the White House. And they register and take the temperature of when Epstein comes back into the news above a certain volume level. And once that happens, they come up with a series of AI-generated prompts or AI-generated ideas from prompts that will take Epstein out of the news, whether it's announcing an additional 100% tariff on Canada, whether it's bombing a boat. By the way, these boats, there is no fentanyl in Venezuela. There's never been proof they're producing fentanyl. Bombing the distribution system when you're trying to get rid of drugs, you go after the supply or the demand side. You don't go after the distribution system.
That's China.
And the boats they're bombing would need to conduct 20 fuel stops to get to Miami. That seems like a pretty unlikely way to distribute fentanyl.
These guys are water skiing. They're just out there.
They're doing something, and it may be illegal, but I don't think it's transporting fentanyl to the United States. But every time we take the USS Ford strike group, which is probably the most lethal weapon in history, and we bomb a fishing boat, it pushes Epstein out of the news for 6, 12, 24 hours. And whether it's tearing down the East Wing, I think we have a dead pedophile basically running the country right now. And I think that you're going to see, quite frankly, Billy, I think in the next 7 days with these files coming out, you're going to see so much crazy shit in statements and decisions come out of the White House to try and distract us from what these things say, assuming that there is real smoking guns. But I think you have, I think Epstein's the third most powerful person in the world right now. I think he's dictating the decisions in the most powerful country in the world.
I think that's an argument that many would agree with. And by the way, the volume on Epstein is so loud right now; it's literally on Trump's desk.
Yeah.
So it's and everyone knows what you said will resonate. That they know he's going to try and change the subject. So
Yeah.
what happens next could be, has got to be something very big and very urgent, and that's terrifying in itself. We'll see. I don't know, but it's really disheartening, this whole thing. And I got to tell you, by the way, you talk about Mike Johnson. I mean, Speaker of the House, who did everything he could to keep this thing off the floor. Just earlier this week, we saw, the video of him, escorting his daughter to the Purity Ball, protecting his 13-year-old from, from premarital relations and being, a very conservative, hovering, protective father. And he's the same guy who's trying to keep the Epstein file situation off the floor. Seems very confusing to me.
It is. It's gonna be an interesting week.
Scott Galloway is with us. He is the author of Notes on Being a Man, his new book. I love Scott, how in the end of the book, you write a letter to your boys, which is really awesome. And your boys are 15 and 18, is it? How old are they?
That's correct. Yeah.
15 and 18. It says, Alec, Nolan, I write this book inspired by you. I love you both so much. Incredibly proud of you. You're becoming impressive young men and good citizens. Being your dad has been the most meaningful experience in my life. Such a nice way to begin. It's long. It's a long letter, but it's, you go into all kinds of things. We're mammals, and mammals thrive in packs and herds, schools. Try to limit the amount of time you spend alone. This won't be easy, as the deepest pocketed firms with the most talented people armed with godlike technology will try to convince you that you can have a low-friction, easier version of life on a screen with an algorithm. You need to be around other people as much as possible. I just love that. And I think, how have we failed our boys? To what degree have we failed our boys? And who has failed? Who failed our boys?
Well, I think it's multidimensional. So start with some stats. If you walk into a morgue and there's 5 people who died by suicide, 4 are men. 3 times as likely to be addicted, 3 times as likely to be homeless, 12 times as likely to be incarcerated. More single women own homes than single men now. 2 to 1 female to male college graduates probably within 5 years. So, and by the way, we should do nothing to get in the way of the ascent of our sisters and our mothers. That's a wonderful thing.
Yeah.
And I'd like to think that men could be the afterburner on that ascent. But there's just no getting around it. Young men have fallen further faster than any cohort in history. And Billy, because of my unearned, you're younger than me, but because of my generation's unearned privilege, a third of the world's economic growth from 45 to 2000 was registered by 5% of America. The population was Americans, and almost all that prosperity was crammed into the 1/3 of that 5% of men who were white heterosexual males. So I understand the gag reflex when I start talking about or advocating for young men, but the result is we have a group that is fallen further faster than any cohort in history in America, and there's just a lack of empathy for them. So some of it is biological. A boy's prefrontal cortex is 18 months behind a girl's. 2 seniors, a boy and a girl, the seniors are basically competing against a 10th grader and doesn't catch up the executive function until he is 25. I think we have an education system that is biased against boys. A boy for the exact same behavior is twice as likely to be suspended as a girl. A black boy 5 times as likely. Think about the behaviors we encourage in primary school. Sit still, be organized, be a pleaser, raise your hand. You just described a girl. We seem to have reduced the on-ramps into a middle class life for a young man. Remember wood, metal, and auto shop? They've gone
Yeah.
away. They're 3% of LinkedIn titles in America say apprentice. It's 11% in the UK and Germany. They do a better job finding jobs for the 2/3 of kids who are not going to end up in college. And then we talked about big tech. You in the letter you referenced, you have the most talented companies in the world are trying to convince young men that get them a reasonable facsimile of life on a screen. Why go through the pecking order of having friends when you have Discord and Reddit? Why try and navigate the corporate world when you can trade stocks or crypto on Robinhood or Coinbase? And why would you go through the effort, the expense, the humiliation, the rejection of trying to find a romantic partner when you have lifelike synthetic porn? And the result is men aged 20 to 30 are now spending less time outdoors than prison inmates. And I think we're going to end up with a group of highly dopa sensitive or dopa craving young men who are increasingly sequestered from society. And unfortunately, that 40% of the S&P represented by those 10 companies right now are sort of in the business of evolving a new species of asocial, asexual males. So these young men are up against a biological, sociological, and technological barriers. And in addition, some of this is just basic democracy, and that is the DN democracy is working too well, and that is old people have figured out a way to vote themselves more money. And 40% of our total budget now goes to programs on seniors, but only 4.5% goes to the Department of Education, only 1.5% to SNAP for kids. And some kids don't vote, so they don't get a lot of attention. And young men don't vote, so they don't get a lot of attention. And you have, to the far right's credit, they recognize the problem first, but their answer, excuse me, their solution is to take women and non-whites back to the 50s, and that's not the answer. And then the far left says, well, young men don't have problems, they are the problem, and their advice is just to act more like a woman, and I don't think that's helpful. So young men are up against a variety of economic, technological, and sociological, and also just governmental, priorities that have resulted in a generation of young men where 1 in 7 are called NEETs, and that is they're neither in education, employment, or training. They've just dropped out. They're not even trying. And the scariest stats I've seen recently is that 45% of men 18 to 24 have never asked a woman out in person, and 63% of men under the age of 30 are not even trying to date. They're not even pursuing relationships. And the problem with not having a romantic relationship is that while there's this cartoon of a woman in her 30s who's alone and never found love and is living with cats, and what a tragedy, she's actually doing okay. When women don't have a romantic relationship, they oftentimes pour that energy back into work and friends. When men don't have a relationship, they oftentimes pour that energy into porn, conspiracy theory, misogyny. In some, they just become shitty citizens. So it ends up that men need relationships more than women, Billy. A widow is happier after her husband dies. A widower is less happy after his wife dies. Mm-hmm. Women in relationships do live longer, 2 to 4 years, but men much longer, 4 to 7 years. So the lack of economic viability of young men is taking a real toll on our society, because something we don't like to admit, but it's as true as it's ever been, is that men mate socioeconomically horizontally and down, women horizontally and up. And when the pool of horizontal and up of men keeps shrinking, there are just fewer and fewer men that women are interested in mating with. And the result is that 40 years ago, 60% of households by the age of 30 had a child. Now it's 27%. And I'm sure you've run into women who say there are no good men out there, or I can't find a man to date.
Oh, I do.
They can find a man to date. They just can't find a man they want to mate with.
Scott, this is what's happened. Okay, so I'm going to get personal for a second here. Like, I'm 54 years old. I've been divorced since 2019. I have an excellent relationship with my ex-wife. We have 3 daughters. But my family was just me and my brother, so 2 sons for my folks. Like you, I'm single now, and I'm telling you something. This is the amount of because of your book. I have asked, being out on socializing, I've asked, younger women who approach me. I say, "How's it going out there? How are the guys going?" And in your age group, what's happening? They're all. I mean, this is in the 30s. They're all disillusioned, and they're all interested in older men. Now, for me. I'm not. A little younger is fine, but not too much younger, or else it's just we're in different spheres and it doesn't feel right. I've got 3 daughters, and one of them happens to be 27. And that's an uncomfortable thing. But it is. I'm experiencing it, and I'm seeing it even on the upper ends. And maybe that's because this began. I don't know when we can point to the period that we started to. Did we demonize boys? Did we forget boys? When did that begin?
I think it's been incremental over the last several decades, but to your point, only 1 in 3 men under the age of 30 is in a relationship, but 2 in 3 women under the age of 30 is in a relationship. Now, why is that? It's the dynamic you just referenced, and that is women are dating older and older because they want more economically and emotionally viable men. And what happens when you digitize a market is there becomes a consolidation of power. It becomes winner take most. You consolidate e-commerce, or you digitize e-commerce, one company gets 50% Amazon. You consolidate or digitize information, one company gets 90% of search, Google. You consolidate social media or connecting online, or you digitize it, one company has 2/3 of all social media outside of China. That's Meta. It used to be the primary means of meeting people was church, friends, school, work. Now it's strictly online. So we've digitized, online is number one. We've digitized mating, which again has a winner take most environment. And that is a guy like you, like you're what's considered a high quality aspirational male, right? You're good looking, you're thin, you have some economic security. It's never been better for Billy Bush.
Keep going. Keep going. This is sounding great.
Well, it's true. The flow you're going to have is going to be crazy. And I'm not suggesting this is you, but unfortunately, these men in the top 10% can engage in what's called Porsche polygamy. And that is they have so many options that it doesn't incent long-term behavior, or it doesn't incent good behavior or a commitment to long-term relationships. Whereas the bottom 90 are almost shut out of the market. If you're a man of average attractiveness on a dating app, you have to swipe right 200 times to get one coffee. And then if you set up 5 coffees, 4 of the 5 will ghost you. They will reconsider and not show up. So a man of average attractiveness, when he goes on a dating app, has to swipe right 1,000 times to get one coffee. He becomes very discouraged, and quite frankly, sometimes he becomes angry. And so in addition, there's been a very weird phenomena where, so most media will, first off, I want to be clear, men need to level up. Women don't have an obligation to service the community. Men's problems are not women's fault. And I'm not saying women can save men, but the reality is men absolutely need to level up. We need policies that put more money in young people's pockets. We need to, quite frankly, make men more viable. They need to work on themselves. Men my generation need to weigh in and support them with emotional and economic help. Yeah. But also there is a bit of a movement online in media that says to women that every yellow flag is a red flag. Exit the relationship. Walk right out on that man, queen. You're a beautiful, young, independent woman. You don't need a relationship. And what you find is that if you talk to people, if there's been surveys done of couples who've been married longer than 30 years, and in 70 to 80% of the cases, one was much more interested in the other in the beginning. And it was almost always the man who was more interested. The bottom line is, Billy, is we're much less choosy than women. If you're in a room with 100 people, 50 men and 50 women, and there's alcohol, the majority of the men would agree to have sex with the majority of the women, whereas the majority of the women would have sex with none of the men. It's much choosier. But the cadence of mating is the following. And no number of subscriptions to the Atlantic and the New York Times are going to change this for a while. And that is, the man then demonstrated excellence over time. I went to church. He was at church. I liked the way he treated his parents. We worked together, and I found out he was outstanding at what he did. We were in the same friend group, and I liked the way he danced. I thought he was funny. there are now no venues for a man to demonstrate excellence. It's all based on an initial impression of a few very basic metrics, his ability to signal wealth and his height. And so you keep hearing there's all these now basically online has traded. Have you heard this 6 foot and 6 figures? They ask women, what is your minimum standard? 6 feet, 6 figures, right? That's become a thing. If you take out obese men, married men, men over the age of 50, that's 2% of the population. So unfortunately, men have fewer venues to demonstrate excellence. They're not church attendance, religious attendance to religious institutions is at an all-time low. Many are in remote work. Many aren't going to school. Also, guys don't want to be that guy. They don't want to be the guy that approaches a woman, it doesn't go well, and he feels like a creep. He doesn't want to be, they've gotten a lot of mixed signals that is borderline violence. And what I hear from women, this is one thing I don't have data on, but it sounds like you've experienced the same thing, is when I do talk to young women, they say, I'm out, I'm single, I'm ready to mingle, I look amazing, and no men approach me. And so there's just a lack of venues and approach. And I think one of the things that we need to do with our sons, and you have daughters, I have sons, but I think about this, is you got to teach them how to express romantic interest while making someone feel safe. And also to tell them that if you go up to someone, and this is true for friends, hey, do you want to grab a ball game or something? Or do you want to come over and watch the football game? Express platonic interest, but also expressing romantic interest. Hey, where are you guys from? If it goes well, ask them out for coffee. If they're not interested, you pick up on the cues, you politely excuse yourself, nice to meet you, and guess what? You're both going to be fine.
Yeah. You mentioned earlier the dating apps and the swipe rights and whatever, and I'm not 6 feet, which is too bad, but not too far from it. But you also talk about socialization, and look, I've never been on a dating app in my life. I'd rather go to the bar and tell a story and meet people and say hello. And what we've got is this terrible culture where that's just either terrifying or so unrewarding, and boys are left feeling so bad about themselves in an environment like that they just don't do it. And women are losing out. So while we want to celebrate women, I work with women. I've worked for women, for much of my career. That's great that we're all in the work. Without women, I don't think we would be the number one economy in the world. I don't think we'd be, thank God for them in that regard. But, how do we engage, give boys the courage again? I remember falling flat on my face. I remember the nerves I felt when I had to pick up the phone. My parents gave me a half an hour break after studying, when I was in school, to be able to call a girl. And I was just, oh my God, it was running through me. It was so exciting and also terrifying. But that's the good stuff in life. It just saddens me.
The last thing you said is really powerful, and that is, think about the most important things in your life, right? It's relationships. And whether it's the relationship with your kids, the relationship with a romantic partner, the relationship with your friends, the relationship with coworkers you've known for a while and maybe made some money with or made progress with, the thing they all have in common is they're really hard. And they involve a lot of disappointment, and they involve a lot of rejection. And when you have these frictionless online relationships waiting for you, it's seducing a lot of young people into these synthetic frictionless relationships, and they never develop the skills. And even more, more tragically, they never really understand what real victory feels like. And that is having a real friend. The friends you made in your 20s, you kind of wake up, you're getting to that age right now where you're like, you just feel really close to these people, and you just recognize the joy and camaraderie you have registered with them is wonderful. Figuring out a way to navigate a romantic relationship such that it ends up, quite frankly, in sex is just amazing, because it's hard. It's hard to get there. It's hard to.
It's the good stuff in life. It's like, I literally, if you're not in pursuit as a young guy, and especially in college, and pursuing women, there's nothing more exhilarating
when it
Sad.
works.
That's like the number one
When it
thing
works.
that is the most exhilarating thing in life. And there's no
And-
interest?
But you have a good. Well, one, it's expensive.
Yeah.
Two, there are fewer third places.
Oh.
Also, the anti-alcohol. 40% of, I'm in London today. 40% of pubs and clubs have closed down since COVID. It's very expensive, and also, there's a competitor at home with Netflix, video games, and also with increasingly lifelike
Porn.
And when I coach young men, I say, look, I'm not going to tell you to not engage in porn. I think that's unrealistic for many young men. What I'm going to tell them is you need to modulate it, because that fire. So, for example, we've demonized and pathologized romantic and sexual interest among young men, that it makes them creeps. No, it's not. It's a wonderful thing. And I have 7.5 billion examples of why the greatest alliance in history is between men and women. And also that fire of wanting to meet people and have relationships, have romantic and physical relationships, for most men turns them into better men. I need to dress better. I need to work out. I need to develop an ability to endure rejection. I need to have a sense of humor. I need to demonstrate a kindness practice. I need to have the resilience to text maybe the second time when I don't hear back the first time. I need to figure out the difference between being persistent and harassing someone. And if you can't figure out that difference, you got bigger problems. So all of these skills are the same skills that are going to benefit you across the rest of your professional life. And unfortunately, young men aren't developing these skills. You hear stories about a guy approaching someone at a bar. It doesn't go well. He says something stupid. And then it ends up they both are one of the 400,000 people that work at JP Morgan. And he's now that guy at his job, and it's not good for his career. So the advice I give to men is, one, the first thing I ask when I coach men is, would you want to have sex with you? Do you look good? Do you dress well? Do you smell nice? Do you have a plan? You don't have to be rich, but you have to have a plan.
Yeah.
Are you kind? Do you have a kindness practice? Do you have good manners? Are you thoughtful? Do you organize an interesting date? It doesn't have to be an expensive date, but it has to be interesting.
Totally.
And the advice
shaping, creating a beautiful date, laying it out, executive producing a date. Wow.
Something. And then the advice I have for young women is what I call just a second coffee. And I'm not asking women to lower their standards. I never would. But if you look at the data around mating, oftentimes there isn't sparks in the beginning, but over time, if given the opportunity, a lot of the young men that women end up with have a chance to demonstrate excellence. But if it's sparks right away online, there's just a lack of mating. And then unfortunately, politics has crept into it. I don't know about you, but all the women I dated in my 20s and 30s, I can't remember for the life of me any of their politics.
Right.
So we've injected yet another kind of ejection button. Well, oh no, he or she's MAGA, I'm out. So the result is, like I said, 60% of people age 30 used to have a kid in their house. Now it's 27%. The number of people connecting. Teen pregnancy, there are now more women having babies over the age of 40 than under the age of 25. And teen pregnancy, the lack of teen pregnancy is a good thing, but it's a symptom of the fact that we didn't expect this. Young people aren't having sex. My parents were worried I was going to get into too much trouble. I think now parents are worried their kids aren't going to get into enough trouble.
Yes, exactly right. And by the way, Cameron Diaz, I think, unless that was an AI joke, Cameron Diaz is 51 and pregnant again. Maybe I fell for that. I don't know. Scott, I got to pay a quick bill here so I can pay for that martini with when I take out somebody. We'll get to that, but so many more questions. I want to talk just, and I know I don't want to take all of your time, but especially with social media, which terrifies me. But this is a word from our sponsor, Venbrook Insurance, and specifically Jeffrey Lang, who works with business owners at Venbrook. Jeffrey says it's not the risks you worry about that end up causing damage. It's the ones you never see coming. See, business interruption is the biggest source of insurance claims, and people are not usually prepared, whether it's a liability claim, property damage, or a workers' comp incident. It's crucial to have the right coverage in place. Jeffrey's team at Venbrook works with you to make sure you're covered from every angle. It's all about helping you make bold, smart moves with confidence so you can keep moving forward with what matters. That's why Venbrook's tagline is boldly go forward. Book a free consultation at venbrook.com/hotmics and tell them Billy sent you. Also want to thank our sponsor, PrizePicks. I go to PrizePicks in hopes to win money every time. I watch the football and I make the picks and I never, ever win. How did Monday Night Football work out for me? I mean, this is so easy and fun, but I still can't win. Put up the card from Monday, Steve. Let's take a quick look here. Look at this. See, I said Dak Prescott, he would throw for more than 256.5. Yeah, he did. And George Pickens would catch more than 65.5. And he did. And then I said Geno Smith would fall on his face and throw for less than 231.5 yards. And you know what? Geno outperformed, so I lost. Too bad. Okay, anyway, PrizePicks is easy. And by the way, you'll get $50 with your first $5 lineup every time. Just go down and get it. We got Thursday Night Football coming up here. This is Josh Allen and the Buffalo Bills. No question he throws for more than 225 yards. And what about Will Anderson, defensive end from Houston? Is he going to have at least a sack or a half a sack? I say less. I don't think he's going to have any. All right, so Scott Galloway is with us. He is the author of Notes on Being a Man. How much can we blame Mark Zuckerberg and Tim Cook and the guys that are running all the big social media companies for devouring our kids and especially our boys?
I think it's a big part of it. I mean, it's multidimensional. I mentioned that men aren't stepping up to mentor these young men. The single point of failure, if you reverse engineer to when a boy comes off the tracks, is when he loses a male role model to death, divorce, or abandonment. So what's interesting is you have girls in single-parent homes have the same outcomes. Sometimes they're more promiscuous because they're looking for male attention in the wrong places. But in terms of college attendance, rates of self-harm, eventual income, they have nearly the same outcomes as when they're raised in a dual-parent home. What's interesting, it's entirely different for young boys, though. When a boy loses a male role model, at that moment, he becomes more likely to be incarcerated than graduate from college. So what the research shows is that while boys are physically stronger, they're emotionally and neurologically much weaker than girls. So we need to ensure that men, kind of a standard gestalt in our society is that a moment a boy does not have male role models, that we find a way to get men involved in his life. Now, big tech plays a huge role in this. And from 1945 to 1995, we thought the ultimate means of creating shareholder value was to create a mediocre product and then inject it with these emotional associations, kind of the big brand age. And the ultimate brand association, Billy, was sex. Drink this beer, you'll be hot. You'll be more likely to have a random sexual encounter if you're driving a Range Rover versus a Vega or whatever. And then in 1995, the algorithms that started crawling the world and measuring engagement found a new secret sauce even better than sex, and that was rage. And that if you can get people online and enrage them and pit them against each other, you'll keep them glued to their phones. So unfortunately now, we have an economic incentive tied to getting Americans to dislike each other. We are actually not that divided. I can't get over, one of the things I really don't, is so tragic about AI is it's not crawling the real world. Because I say a lot of provocative, controversial things, but I find in the real world, people couldn't be more lovely. If they disagree with me, they come up and say, I have a disagreement on your views on Israel, whatever, and we have a pleasant conversation. People just couldn't be nicer. Online, it is just so fucking ugly.
Yeah.
And that's what AI is crawling. That's what AI is doing. And that's where these people, if you look at, for example, we were talking about pi, if you look at all the shooters, let's look at Charlie Kirk's shooter. The radical left, the radical right were responsible, according to people trying to interpret the fonts on shell casings. And the reality is it's a false argument because the majority of mass shooters and almost every political shooter, act of political violence, they're actually not that politically engaged.
Right.
They're young men that aren't attaching to relationships. They go extremely online and get radicalized, and then they have access to guns. But the kid who shot Charlie Kirk, he hadn't even voted. It's just, so we have these hollow arguments without facing the real problem. 98.4% of mass shooters are men. Most of them are young men. And also, while there is violence, it is obviously horrific. If you look at the actual numbers So just reverse engineer that into there's a movement online where a lot of women have said, I'm not going to date because I'm worried about being unalived, which is the politically correct way of saying murdered. Violence against women is still a huge problem in our nation. 2,500 people murdered every year. 70% are actually murdered by people they know. But as it relates to dating, if you look at the numbers, if you go on a date with a young man, he's 16 times more likely to go home and hurt himself than hurt you. You're 4 times as likely to be hurt or to die on the car ride over or choke during dinner than be hurt by your date. And yet we have pathologized young men because of these horrific acts into believing that all men are a physical threat to all women. And one, we need to do a better job of ensuring our men demonstrate what I think is one of the 3 legs of the stool, and that is protection, such that they feel safe on the subway. They cross the street because there's men on that side of the street, not because there aren't. But there has been a certain demonization or we pathologize young men. But this big tech is not helping because the algorithms have connected profit to dividing, polarizing, and sequestering us. For every minute they get you on your phone and away from your friends, your family, and experiences, they make tens of billions of dollars. And unfortunately, we don't have an electorate that has the skills or the inclination to go against these very deep-pocketed companies. There's more regulation in that mic you're speaking into than there is into big tech. So some of it is their fault, but you could argue, okay, they're doing their job. Their key component of capitalism is companies that are wildly competitive, will do anything to make money when they pay taxes. It's really our fault as voters, and that is we haven't elected people who seem to either have the backbone, the will, or the domain expertise to actually regulate these companies. And so I would argue voters and our electorate are really the culprits around not regulating. There's no reason anyone under the age of 18 should be on social media. We shouldn't
Right.
have synthetic relationships. If a company is constantly elevating content that causes violence, they should be subject to the same standards as any other media company. These are fixable problems. There's common sense solutions. We just don't appear to have the electorate or the will to implement them.
Coming up, I have my interview with Big Brothers Big Sisters Los Angeles, because
That's great.
I've got 3 daughters, and I thought, well, I got a bunch of guys we work with here, and boy, we could mentor a young guy. And the guy that gave me the idea is you. Looking at the book, just reading the book, and I said, wow, I need to do this. One definite thing is that men out there who grew up in a better time, and I mean better time by there's no social media, this is a way to really not just gripe about it, but do something about it. So I made that phone call inspired by you, and we've got that meeting coming up. I'm looking forward to it. But I think like man camps is a good idea. Like, put the phones down. What you're saying in your book, actually, taking it face to face in I'm sure you do in public speaking around the country, and but other guys getting involved in the lives of boys in a good way. They're missing the sweet stuff, man.
Well, first off, what you're doing is really probably the biggest part of the solution, and it really is wonderful what you're doing, because right now in New York, and I don't know if the same is true in LA, but I would imagine it's similar, there are 3 times as many women applying to be big sisters as there are men applying to be big brothers. And it's a couple of things. One, men just aren't stepping up to the extent they are like you are. But 2, there's a general sense, say a young man's in his 30s and he doesn't have kids of his own or a wife of his own. He thinks, I have paternal and fraternal concern and love I could give to a young man. There's a taboo. Well, why does this guy want to be involved in a 15-year-old's life?
Yeah.
Right? Because of the Catholic Church and Michael Jackson. I remember when I was on Bill Maher and I had started advocating for getting involved in a young man's life, and he said, well, I take an interest in a 15-year-old's life, and the next day it's on TMZ. And I'm like, that's exactly the problem. And that is the vast majority, there's so many good men out there who want to help and could really, really add value to a young man's life. And then the other thing is And well, I'm not an adolescent psychiatrist. I'm not a CEO. I'm not a baller. It is so easy to add value. You're going to find this out, Bill. It is so easy to add value to these young men's lives because, quite frankly, they make such bad decisions. You know,
Oh my God, yeah.
this is a conversation I had in just the last 2 weeks. No, you cannot survive on pineapple juice and creatine. No, you have a good job. You should not quit your job and move to Alaska right now. That just doesn't make any sense. Think of yourself at this age, just asking a couple questions, just spending time with them, demonstrating, you're an impressive man. Just showing a young man or a boy that you want to spend time with him gives him a sense of confidence and self-esteem. And he'll occasionally start talking to you about things, and you're just going to be able to so easily help him. And so this is, I think it just needs to be almost standard operating procedure for men of our age and younger. I think there's a lot of 30 plus something, guys in their 20s and 30s that could just add a lot of value. And also, it's really rewarding because it's really easy to add value. And the place to start, if you don't want to go through Big Brothers or an organization or a religious institution, just find a single mother in your work environment and say, hey, I'm going to a game. Would your son like to come with me? And I'm
Yeah.
telling you, the answer is going to be yes in all caps because the people recognizing this crisis, and my biggest fans are young men, but my biggest supporters are mothers. Mothers are seeing what's going on. And it goes something like this, the emails I get. I have 3 kids, 2 daughters, 1 son, 1 daughter at Penn, 1 daughter in PR in Chicago, and my son is in the basement playing video games and vaping. Mothers see what's going on. They see the stark difference in the success and maturity of their daughters versus their sons. And just going back to politics, I think that's why Trump is president. If you look at the 3 groups that pivoted hardest from blue to red,
Young
2020 to
men.
2024, number 1 was Latinos. It's hard to draw any conclusions from there because Mexican American in Southern California is just much different than a Cuban American in Florida. Number 2 was people under the age of 30. They're just not doing well. They want change. I get it. I'm not doing well. Whatever's going on now is not working. So any incumbent, I just want the non-incumbent. But the most interesting one was the 3rd hardest pivot from blue to red was among women aged 45 to 64. And Billy, my thesis is that's their mothers. And there are still a disproportionate number of women in America who will vote for who they perceive would be best for their husbands and their sons. And if your son is not doing well, you don't give a shit about territorial sovereignty in Ukraine or transgender rights. You just want change, even if it means chaos. But I think Trump is president because of struggling young men.
It's unbelievable. Yeah. He knew how to, boy, the one thing he's good at is knowing where people are and capitalizing on it. Scott, this book is fantastic. Notes on Being a Man. I love reading about your life. I live here in Los Angeles. One of my favorite places to go to the deli and shop is Vicente Foods on San Vicente Boulevard.
Box boy there. I was a box boy there when I was 17.
Yeah, you were the box boy, and then Westward Ho, which is now Whole Foods on San Vicente Boulevard. You worked at the Mondrian. You went to UCLA. I loved hearing about your frat years. Amazingly, you're a big supporter of the fraternity system. You were the president of the entire Greek system at UCLA, so that's a lofty position.
King of the Jarheads.
The king of the Jarheads. And then I love how you write about your father. Not love that your father left when you were 9, but the relationship with your mother is incredible, and I know you miss her to this day every minute. You write so beautifully about your mom. What a resilient and tough woman. And you lived over in the Valley, and then you lived in Westward. It's just, for a guy that's around here, reading about your life is fascinating. And, not that cool a kid, not that, just a pretty much average kid. And by the way, for a brilliant man who's bought and sold, a bunch of companies and made a ton of money and is so successful, really not a great student.
2.27. Yeah, smartest thing I ever did, Billy, was to be born in America. I had a lot of wind in my back. I got assisted lunch. I got Pell Grants. I got into UCLA when I had a 74% admissions rate. This year it'll be 9%. I bought and sold companies built on this technology, financed by middle-class taxpayers, DARPA, which ultimately became the internet. I had immigrants build my companies. My mom took advantage of family planning when I was in high school. Had she not, I don't think I would have been able to go to college. So I feel as if, quite frankly, I feel as everything that got me to where I am in America is under attack. So I'm very committed to getting involved and kind of, if you will, make America America again. But I have no delusions of grandeur. I'm not a humble person. I'm talented. I'm hardworking. But again, the smartest thing I ever did was to be born in America.
Oh, that's amazing. Best advice for men that you wrote about in your book. Most of the really awful fights I've had with partners have been because we managed to skip lunch. This is about relationships, boys. It's important to be in them and to find that person. Most of the really awful fights I've had with partners have been because we managed to skip lunch. Invest in dual zone climate control cars. And when you sit down at a restaurant, before you do anything, ensure you're not dining with Satan. A draft of cold air. Never leave the house without energy bars and one of those oversized cashmere scarves that could double as a blanket. You're welcome. It's not, it's not that you just,
rocket science.
Some things you can just eliminate right off the bat, like 50%.
Easy stuff right. Yeah.
God, it's really funny, and a lot of your whole personal story is wrapped up in here. I loved it, and I thank you so much, Scott Galloway, Notes on Being a Man, and all your commentary. Thanks for spending some time with us over there in the UK, and you're the best, man. Thank you.
Thanks, Billy. Congrats on all your success.
Thank you so much. We hope to have a little more, right, boys? We want just keep going. We're counting on you to help us build it. Great brand marketing man that you were. Professor, Prof G. Scott Galloway, folks, thank you. And that's it for Hot Mics today with me, Billy Bush, presented by LA Golf. Take your swing to the next level with LA Golf's cutting-edge technology. The Bel Air 2 putter is out, and the longest ball in golf is back in stock. You got to get a hold of the LA Golf ball. You're going to get 8 to 10 more yards out of that ball with your driver because it's, superior technology. All right. LA Golf has a Black Friday Cyber Monday promo starting next Wednesday, the 26th. They're calling it a gift for someone else, a gift for you. Buy a $100 gift card, you get a $25 gift card. Spend $300 on a gift card, and you get $75 gift card. Spend $500, you get $125. Visit LAGolf.com. Upgrade your game. Thanks for listening to us. We're back on Monday. Boom.